It is Saturday, the 30th of May, 2026. Picture this for a second. You are standing in the sprawling, just massive concrete parking lot of the 67,215-seat Puskás Aréna in Budapest.
Oh, what a venue.
Right. It's magnificent. The late spring sun is just starting to dip below the horizon, and it's painting the sky in these like bruised shades of purple and orange. And the air is so thick with anticipation you can practically chew on it.
Oh, yeah.
And echoing out from the stadium's massive sound system, vibrating right through the pavement beneath your feet, are the opening frantic guitar chords of the Killers. They're warming up the crowd, blasting Mr. Brightside.
Classic.
And all around you, the sea of humanity is just split straight down the middle. On your left, you have tens of thousands of fans clad in the deep navy and red of Paris Saint-Germain, and they are loud. They are confident. They are desperate to witness their teams cement an actual modern European dynasty.
A true empire.
Exactly. But then on your right, a massive, anxious sea of Arsenal red and white. And these fans, I mean, they are carrying the suffocating century-spanning weight of a 139-year-old curse, a curse they are desperately praying ends tonight.
The tension is just unbearable.
It really is. Oh, and hovering over every single tackle, every sprint, every tactical decision on that pitch, the 2026 North American World Cup, which kicks off in just over 2 weeks.
It is the absolute definition of a pressure cooker.
Yeah.
I mean, we aren't just looking at a standard cup final here.
No, not at all.
We are looking at a brutal, head-on collision of two completely opposite tactical philosophies. We have an immense amount of historical baggage weighing down both dugouts, and quite frankly, an unprecedented logistical nightmare for the players who are about to step onto that grass.
Welcome to the deep dive. If you've been following the build-up, you know the media noise is just deafening right now. I mean, it's everywhere.
You can't escape it.
You really can't. So our mission today is to cut through all of that noise. We have a massive, comprehensive research dossier compiled from all our sources on this exact match. The 2025-26 UEFA Champions League final between Paris Saint-Germain and Arsenal FC.
And there's a lot to get through.
So much. We are going to extract exactly what you need to know before the referee blows that whistle. We are breaking down the tactical mechanisms, the ghosts of finals past, the mind-boggling player statistics, and, of course, that looming World Cup shadow that could literally change the fate of international football.
It's all connected.
Okay, let's unpack this. And I want to start by looking at the sheer, unadulterated carnage of how these two teams actually got to Budapest. Because, looking at this dossier, their paths could not possibly be more different. I mean, it's almost comical how divergent their styles are, right?
They are polar opposites in almost every measurable metric. It's fascinating. Let's look at the defending champions first. Paris Saint-Germain.
Right.
Remember, they won this tournament last year, just completely dismantling Inter Milan 5-0 in the final.
A total rout.
Exactly. And this season, under Luis Enrique, their path back to the final has been a literal graveyard of historic European giants. I mean, they eliminated Liverpool 4-0 on aggregate.
Right.
And they took apart Chelsea 8-2 on aggregate.
Okay, wait, I still can't wrap my head around that. 8-2. Against Chelsea in a Champions League knockout stage. I mean, I read that in the dossier, and it honestly looks like a typo.
It does. It sounds completely fake, but it's a direct result of how Enrique has them playing. It's this chaotic onslaught. And then, they hit the semifinal against Bayern Munich.
Oh, man.
Right. They produced a 6-5 aggregate win that officially goes down as the highest scoring semifinal in the entire history of the competition.
Right, which included that completely absurd 5-4 first leg in Paris. I was looking at the match data for that game, and it looked more like a basketball scoreline than elite European football.
Pure chaos.
And over the course of their 15 Champions League games this season, PSG has scored a staggering 40 goals. 40.
It's incredible output.
But here's the part that just breaks my brain and where I really need you to explain this to me. In those same 15 games, they have conceded 22 goals.
Yes. That is the crucial defining part of their profile. You cannot separate the goals scored from the goals conceded.
But how is that a viable strategy for a defending European champion? I read these numbers and it feels like, Arsenal is playing like a meticulously engineered high-security bank vault.
That's a good way to put it.
Right. While PSG is essentially operating a fireworks factory with a loose match, just look at Arsenal's run. They are completely unbeaten. 10 wins, 3 draws, 0 losses.
It's a historic run.
If they win in Budapest, they become only the 12th club in the entire history of the European Cup to win the title without suffering a single defeat. I mean, they just knocked out Atlético Madrid 2-1 on aggregate, just grinding out the tie and sealing it with a ruthlessly clinical Bukayo Saka goal in the 44th minute of the second leg.
A masterclass in control.
So I have to ask you, when a team like PSG scores 40 goals but gives up 22, are they actually good defensively? Or do they just fundamentally not care if they concede because they have the mathematical certainty that they will outscore you?
I would argue it's a bit of both, but leaning heavily toward the latter. Like, solid defense is a highly relative term for Luis Enrique's PSG.
Relative how?
Well, let's break down the mechanics of why they concede so often. Because it's not simply a matter of having bad defenders. That's a misconception.
Okay.
It's actually a structural byproduct of their attacking philosophy. So Enrique relies on a very fluid 4-3-3 system. But the key mechanism here, the thing that drives it all, is their heavy, aggressive pressing high up the pitch.
Okay, stop right there. Explain that mechanism for the listener. When we say heavy pressing, what is actually happening on the pitch that leads to them giving up so many goals?
Okay, think of a team's defensive shape like a rubber band. Traditionally, when you lose the ball, the rubber band snaps back. The team drops deep into their own half to form a compact wall, protecting their goalkeeper.
Making themselves hard to break down.
Right. Enrique's PSG doesn't do that at all. When they lose the ball, instead of retreating, they instantly swarm the opponent high up the pitch, deep in the opponent's territory.
Yeah.
They commit their midfielders, their wingers, and even their fullbacks forward to trap the ball.
Just overwhelming them.
Exactly. They want to win it back within 3 seconds.
So they are essentially gambling. They are betting that their swarm will overwhelm the opponent before the opponent can make even one forward pass.
Precisely. It is a massive high-stakes gamble.
Yeah.
Because if the press works, PSG wins the ball 30 yards from the opponent's goal, and they score immediately. That's how you get 40 goals in a campaign.
Right.
But if the opponent, like Bayern Munich, for example, is skilled enough to break that initial swarm with 1 or 2 really precise passes, that rubber band is snapped.
Oh, I see.
PSG has committed 7 or 8 players forward. That leaves their 2 center backs completely isolated against the opponent's attackers with 50 yards of empty green grass behind them.
So it's not that they want to concede, it's that the mathematical probability of conceding skyrockets because they are literally leaving the back door wide open to ensure the front door is kicked down.
That's a brilliant way to put it. They don't mind conceding because their entire tactical framework is predicated on outgunning the opposition. I mean, it requires an incredible amount of chaotic energy, blistering pace on the counterattack, and honestly, a supreme psychological arrogance to say, well, you might score 2, but we will score 4.
Which brings us to Mikel Arteta's Arsenal, because looking at this dossier, Arteta seems to look at that kind of chaotic energy and feel physically ill.
Arteta's philosophy is the absolute antithesis of Enrique's. If PSG is chaos, Arsenal is this engine of progressive, suffocating control. I mean, they dictated the tempo of almost every single game they played.
Which is how they ended up conceding the fewest goals in the entire competition.
Exactly.
I see the term suffocating control used a lot in these scouting reports. How does Arteta actually achieve that? Because they aren't just parking the bus and defending with 10 men in the penalty box, right? I mean, they are an attacking team, but they don't give up goals like PSG does.
No, they don't park the bus at all. They do it through what we call positional play or juego de posición. And the linchpin of this entire system, like the mechanism that actually makes it function, is Declan Rice.
The £100 million man.
Worth every penny.
Yeah.
He has been arguably the most important non-scoring player in the Champions League this season.
Okay, explain Rice's role. Because to the casual observer, he just looks like a guy running around the middle of the pitch making tackles. Why is he the anchor?
Okay, think of the pitch as a chessboard. Arteta wants his attacking pieces pushed very high up the board to control the game. But unlike PSG, who leave that massive empty space behind them, Arteta uses Declan Rice as a human failsafe.
A failsafe.
Yes. When Arsenal attacks, Rice sits just behind the forward line, and he is constantly scanning the spaces where the opponent might counterattack. He is essentially playing a game of spatial geometry in his head in real time.
Wow.
Before the opponent even wins the ball back, Rice has already positioned himself in the exact passing lane they want to use.
So he's putting out the fire before the spark is even lit.
Yes. He minimizes risks by predicting them. So when Arsenal loses the ball, Rice is already there to slow the opponent down, allowing the rest of the Arsenal team to recover their defensive shape. They squeeze the life out of the opposition, not by tackling violently, but by denying them any space to breathe.
It really is a classic unstoppable force meets immovable object scenario.
Yeah,
You have PSG wanting to turn the game into a track meet and Arsenal wanting to turn it into a chess match.
perfectly said.
But as much as I love nerding out over the geometry of Declan Rice, you really cannot understand these contrasting styles on the pitch without looking at the men orchestrating them from the dugouts. And honestly, looking at the historical ghosts haunting both of these clubs, the psychological warfare here is just as fascinating as the tactical warfare.
Oh, absolutely. The history woven into this specific final is incredibly dense. I mean, the context makes the tactics infinitely more highly charged.
Let's start with Arsenal's historical weight, because calling it a burden feels like a massive understatement. This club has existed for 139 years.
A very long time.
They have legendary, pioneering managers in their DNA. Herbert Chapman revolutionized tactics in the 1930s. Bertie Mee won the double. Arsène Wenger went an entire Premier League season unbeaten with the Invincible.
Legendary names.
Yet, despite all of that domestic dominance, not a single one of those giants ever won the European Cup or the Champions League. In 139 years, their only other final appearance was exactly 20 years ago, in 2006.
Ah, the infamous loss to Barcelona.
Infamous is the word. And it was played in Paris, no less. I remember the details from the dossier. Arsenal went into that 2006 final having set a record for consecutive clean sheets. They looked impenetrable.
They did.
And then, in the 18th minute, their goalkeeper, Jens Lehmann, rushes out, brings down Samuel Eto'o, and gets a straight red card. They play 70-plus minutes with 10 men, eventually losing 2-1. So you have this 20-year gap between finals, which our sources note is the longest drought ever recorded by an English club between final appearances.
That is a staggering amount of time for a fan base to carry that specific trauma. I mean, it becomes part of the club's identity.
And the man tasked with finally breaking this curse, with doing what Wenger and Chapman couldn't do, is Mikel Arteta. He will be exactly 44 years and 65 days old on the day of the final in Budapest.
Still so young for a manager.
Right. If he pulls this off, he becomes the second youngest manager to ever lead Arsenal in a major European final. Plus, the team has just equaled their all-time club record of 41 wins in a single season, a record that was set way back in 1970-71.
Which really highlights the sheer quality of the squad he has built.
But I want to challenge you on something here. A 139-year drought for a club of Arsenal's global stature is staggering. Every pundit, every fan, every newspaper is going to be talking about this drought in the 2 weeks leading up to the game.
It's all anyone will talk about.
Right. So is Arteta's relative youth actually an advantage here? Think about it. He wasn't even born the last time Arsenal won 41 games in a season. He wasn't involved in the 2006 heartbreak. Does his age and his modern, hyper-analytical approach insulate him from the emotional pressure of the club's history?
That's a really interesting angle. What's fascinating here is how you have to look at how psychological weight balances against sheer undeniable momentum. You make a fair point. Arteta is deeply pragmatic. His system, that suffocating control we just talked about, is designed to remove emotion from the game.
Yeah.
It's designed to be a machine. And a machine doesn't care about what happened in 2006. So in that sense, yes, his approach insulates the squad to a degree. However, we cannot ignore the broader context of their current season.
Right, the treble chase.
Exactly. Our dossier shows they are currently chasing a domestic Premier League title, and they are just 3 wins away from securing it. So let's map out the timeline.
Sure.
If they win the league around May 24th, they will travel to Budapest 6 days later for this final on May 30th.
Yeah.
If they win both, they're in historic treble territory. So they are riding absolute maximum momentum.
Which sounds like a good thing.
It is, but momentum is a double-edged sword. It brings maximum pressure. Every time they win, the expectation that they must win the final grows heavier. And let's not forget the pedigree of the man waiting for them in the opposite dugout.
Luis Enrique, a man who knows exactly how to handle the pressure of an elite European final.
Enrique is a fascinating counterpart to Arteta here. Look at what he has achieved. He rebuilt this PSG squad from the absolute rubble of the post-Kylian Mbappe era.
Which everyone thought would take a decade.
Yes, exactly. When you lose a generational superstar, most clubs enter a multi-year transition period. Enrique accelerated that. He created a collective system rather than relying on one individual. And because of that, he is now bidding to become the first coach to win back-to-back Champions League titles since Zinedine Zidane did it with Real Madrid from 2016 to 2018.
A three-peat for Zidane, which is still absurd to think about.
It is, but Enrique matching that back-to-back feat would be monumental. Furthermore, if PSG wins at Budapest, They become only the 9th club in the entire history of the European Cup to retain the title.
Wow.
And it would mark PSG's 100th Champions League victory, making them the first French club to ever reach that milestone.
So for PSG, this isn't just about winning a trophy. This is about validating their entire modern project. It is the birth of a genuine dynasty, proving last year wasn't just some fluke.
Precisely. Arsenal is fighting to end a curse, while PSG is fighting to establish an empire.
Okay, but we haven't even touched on the most cinematic part of this whole managerial clash, the subplot that makes this feel like a Hollywood script, the revenge arc.
Ah, yes. You're referring to last season's semifinal.
Yes. If we look at the head-to-head records in our research, PSG knocked Arsenal out of the Champions League at the semifinal stage last year. They beat them 3-1 on aggregate.
A tough loss.
The dossier points out that Arsenal's only win against PSG in their last 5 competitive meetings was a 2-0 home result in the league phase last season. But when the stakes were highest in the knockout phase, PSG took control of both legs. So I want you to put yourself in Arteta's shoes for a second.
Okay.
Try to process this level of psychological warfare. Imagine showing up to the biggest day of your entire professional career. You know your legendary predecessors failed at this exact task. You know it's been 20 years since the club even had the chance to play on the stage. You walk out of the tunnel, you look across the pitch, and the person standing in your way is the exact same person who tactically outsmarted you and ruined your dreams just 12 months ago. How do you prepare a team for that?
It is an incredibly difficult hurdle.
Yeah.
I mean, as a manager, you have to acknowledge the elephant in the room without letting it crush your players.
How, though?
Arteta has to find a way to frame that 3-1 aggregate loss, not as a trauma, but as an educational experience. He has to show his players exactly why they lost last year. You know, perhaps they got caught in Enrique's high press, perhaps they lost their structural discipline, and then he has to prove to them that this year's iteration of Arsenal is immune to those mistakes.
Which is easier said than done when the whistle blows and the adrenaline spikes, because tactics and history, as compelling as they are on a chalkboard, only matter if the players execute on the day. And this dossier highlights some individual performances this season that are just, well, they defy logic.
They really do.
Let's shift our focus to the personnel. Specifically, I want to zero in on a 70 million euro man who is basically treating this game as his own personal World Cup. I am talking about PSG's winger, Kvaratskhelia.
His output this season is arguably the primary reason PSG is back in this final. The numbers are simply outrageous. In 15 Champions League matches, he has 10 goals and 6 assists.
Which, by the way, is a single-season record for PSG. He actually surpassed Ousmane Dembele's mark from last year, and PSG bought him from Napoli in January 2025 for around 70 million euros, which, you know, in today's market, looks like the bargain of the century.
It really does. But it's not just the sheer volume of his goals and assists. It is the consistency under the highest possible pressure.
Tell me about the record.
Right, so Kvaratskhelia currently holds a brand new Champions League record. He has recorded a direct goal contribution, so either a goal or an assist, in 7 consecutive knockout games.
I really want the listener to stop and let that sink in for a second. We are talking about the knockout stages of the Champions League, the quarterfinals, the semifinals against the best defenses on the planet, and he has contributed in 7 straight matches. That officially beats the benchmarks previously set by both Lionel Messi and Cristiano Ronaldo in their primes.
It's hard to even process.
More consecutive knockout contributions than Messi or Ronaldo, that is God-tier level performance.
It is. And the mechanism of how he plays perfectly suits Enrique's system. Because PSG draws teams in with their chaotic press, Kvaratskhelia is often left isolated one-on-one against a retreating fullback. And his ability to manipulate the ball with both feet makes him practically unplayable in those scenarios. But beyond the tactics, there is a massive psychological factor here that we have to discuss, and it stems from international football.
Ah, right. Georgia did not qualify for the 2026 World Cup.
Exactly, and this is the most critical dynamic of his performance in Budapest. If you look around that pitch on May 30th, almost every other star player is acutely aware that there is another massive career-defining tournament looming in a matter of weeks, the World Cup.
Yeah.
But for Kvaratskhelia, this final is the absolute end of the line for his season.
It's literally do or die.
It is his entire Ballon d'Or pitch wrapped up in 90 minutes. He is playing with zero safety net.
Let's explore that psychology because it's fascinating. You have a player who knows he won't be on the global stage in North America. The Ballon d'Or voters have very short memories. They tend to heavily favor players who shine in the World Cup.
Always.
So Kvaratskhelia knows that if he wants to be named the best player in the world, he has to do something so spectacular in Budapest that it outshines whatever happens in June and July.
That's the reality, and that psychological position is totally unique on that pitch.
Yeah.
I want to introduce a concept here, the subconscious preservation of the body.
Okay, what does that mean?
For other players, no matter how much they want to win the Champions League, there is a tiny voice in the back of their minds, terrified of pulling a hamstring or tearing a ligament 2 weeks before a World Cup. It affects how hard they go into a 50-50 tackle. It affects whether they make that one final 40-yard sprint in the 89th minute.
It's human nature.
Exactly. But Kvaratskhelia, he does not have that voice. He is going to empty the tank completely.
I love that phrase, emptying the tank. But PSG isn't just a one-man show relying on a Georgian phenom. They also have the actual reigning 2025 Ballon d'Or winner operating on the other wing, Ousmane Dembele.
Also incredibly dangerous.
Our dossier notes he scored in the 3rd minute of the second leg against Bayern Munich, instantly setting the tone for that chaotic match. But let's look at Arsenal, because their squad is packed with talent that has been engineered to counteract this exact type of threat. You have Bukayo Saka, the captain, who just became the first Arsenal player in history to score in 2 different Champions League semifinals.
A huge milestone for him.
And then you have Gabriel Martinelli. I found his stats in the dossier particularly interesting. He is Arsenal's top scorer in the competition with 6 goals, but he is vastly outperforming his expected goals metric, which sits at just 1.51.
That disparity right there between his expected goals, or XG, and his actual goals is crucial to understanding Arsenal's success.
Break that down for the listener, because sometimes XG can just sound like a nerdy spreadsheet stat. What does it actually tell us about how Martinelli is playing?
All right, so expected goals essentially measures the quality of the chances a player gets. An XG of 1.51 over a campaign means that based on where he was shooting from, an average player would have only scored 1, maybe 2 goals.
Okay.
The fact that Martinelli has scored 6 means he is being ruthlessly, almost unnaturally clinical. He is taking difficult half chances. A snapshot through a crowded penalty box, a tight angle volley, and turning them into goals.
Which is exactly what you need in a final against a team like PSG. If Arsenal is going to sit back and control the tempo, they might not create 10 clear-cut chances. They might only get 3, and they need a guy who can convert a 10% chance into a goal.
Exactly. You need killers in the box. But amidst all these young stars, there is one player in the Arsenal squad whose value might transcend tactical metrics.
Here's where it gets really interesting. Kai Havertz.
The ultimate wild card.
Let's look at his profile here. He has 3 Champions League goals in 7 appearances this season, often being utilized off the bench by Arteta. He isn't the flashy top scorer, but what is absolutely vital about Havertz is his resume.
Oh, without a doubt.
He already has a Champions League winner's medal hanging in his house. He scored the only goal for Chelsea in the 2021 final against Manchester City. So Arteta essentially went out and bought a guy who already has the t-shirt. He bought him to help calm the nerves of a squad that, frankly, has never been anywhere near a stage this massive.
It is a very astute piece of squad building by Arteta. When you have an entire organization carrying the burden of a 139-year weight, the emotional temperature in the dressing room before kickoff is going to be dangerously high.
I can't even imagine.
Players will be hyperventilating, staring at the ceiling, feeling the weight of the world. Having Kai Havertz sitting in the corner tying his boots is invaluable. He is the psychological anchor. He can look around at Saka and Rice and say, I've been here, I've played in this exact fixture, I felt this exact pressure, and I scored the winning goal. It's just a football match.
It's all about nerve management. But as we touched on earlier with Kvaratskhelia, the physical toll of this match is just as alarming as the mental toll. Emptying the tank is a massive, massive concern for almost everyone else on the pitch, because looming just beyond the final whistle is a logistical scheduling nightmare. Let's dive into the 2026 World Cup collision course.
This is where the modern football calendar becomes genuinely problematic, like bordering on reckless.
So let's map out the timeline for the listener, because the sheer proximity of these events is staggering. The Champions League final is Saturday, May 30th. The 48-team World Cup, which is being hosted across the USA, Canada, and Mexico, begins in mid-June.
Just days later.
To put that in perspective, England's very first group game is against Croatia on June 17th. Now, our dossier outlines a specific FIFA regulation. Clubs participating in UEFA finals do not have to release their players for international duty until June 30th.
Which, if you look at the calendar, is well after the World Cup has already started.
Right. Now, obviously, the clubs will release the players before June 30th, likely a day or two after the final in Budapest. But the sheer volume of players involved in this final who are pivotal to their national teams is mind-boggling.
It's a huge roster of internationals.
Just look at Arsenal's confirmed qualifiers. For England alone, Gareth Southgate is relying on Bukayo Saka, Declan Rice, Ben White, Ibaraki Eze, Noni Madueke, and Miles Lewis-Skelly. For Brazil, you have Gabriel Magalhães, Gabriel Martinelli, and Gabriel Jesus. You have William Saliba starting for France, David Raya in the squad for Spain, Victor Gyökeres leading the line for Sweden.
And PSG is no different.
Right. They have Ousmane Dembélé for France, Marquinhos for Brazil, Vitinha for Portugal. The list goes on and on.
And because of that UEFA release rule, these players are going to miss absolutely critical warm-up friendlies with their national teams.
Provide some context on that. What exactly are they missing?
Well, national team managers use early June friendlies to build tactical chemistry and assess fitness. But Arsenal's massive English contingent will almost certainly miss the England versus New Zealand game scheduled in Tampa, Florida on June 6th.
Which is a huge prep game.
Right. Brazil's Martinelli and Marquinhos will likely miss a May 31st friendly against Panama. Sweden's Gyökeres will definitively miss Sweden's June 1st warm-up. I mean, they simply cannot fly from Budapest, recover, cross multiple time zones, and play a game 48 hours later.
I keep trying to think of a real-world analogy for this. It's like cramming for two completely different, incredibly difficult final exams back-to-back, except one exam is in European history and the other is in advanced calculus, and they are located on different continents.
That's a good way to look at it.
And your professors won't let you study for the second one until you finish the first. How do managers like Gareth Southgate for England or Dorival Jr. for Brazil even sleep at night right now? You have your most critical players locked in a high-intensity, emotionally draining club final just days before you need them to fly across the Atlantic, deal with jet lag, and start a World Cup campaign.
I would actually push back on the exam analogy because cramming for an exam is mostly mental fatigue.
Yeah.
What these players are facing is severe physiological trauma.
Okay, take me through the biology of it. What actually happens to a player's body after a match like this?
If we connect this to the bigger picture, this raises an important question about player welfare and peak form. If we look at the sports science, a high-intensity match like a Champions League final causes immense central nervous system fatigue.
Central nervous system.
Yes. It's not just tired leg muscles. The adrenaline dump is so massive that the body's cortisol levels spike dramatically. It can take up to 72 hours just for the nervous system to return to a baseline state, let alone for the fast-twitch muscle fibers to repair themselves.
So they are literally chemically exhausted.
Exactly. This raises a monumental question about periodization. Usually, a sports scientist wants a player to peak physically in mid-June for a World Cup. But Arsenal and PSG players have been forced to peak in late May.
So the question is, will the players who win this final ride an unprecedented wave of euphoric adrenaline straight through the jet lag and into the World Cup, or will both the winners and the losers arrive in North America physically depleted, emotionally hollowed out, and completely spent?
We don't even have to wait until June to see the toll. We're already seeing the physical breaking points right now. Look at PSG's Achraf Hakimi.
Ah, the hamstring injury.
Yes, the Moroccan right back. The demands of Enrique's high-pressing system finally caught up with him. He pulled a hamstring in the first leg of the semifinal against Bayern Munich. Warren Zaire-Emery had to step in and start the second leg. According to the latest reports in the dossier, Hakimi's availability for the final in Budapest is completely unconfirmed. It is a day-to-day medical evaluation.
And crucially, Morocco has qualified for the World Cup, so Hakimi isn't just fighting to be fit for PSG, he is fighting to lead his country.
Every single training session leading up to May 30th is a medical cliffhanger. If he pushes too hard to play against Arsenal, he could tear the hamstring completely and miss the World Cup entirely. It's a devastating choice for a player to make.
The tension surrounding this entire event is so thick you could cut it with a knife. You have the tactical chess match, the 139-year curse, the threat of physical collapse. But in reading through the final pages of this dossier, amidst all the high stakes and the historical weight, there are a few verified facts regarding the context of this match that are so ironic, so perfectly bizarre, they almost feel scripted by a television writer trying to be clever.
The subplots and coincidences surrounding this fixture are genuinely remarkable.
Let's start with the venue itself. The final is being played at the Puskás Aréna in Budapest, named, of course, after Ferenc Puskás.
The legendary Hungarian striker.
Right. But more importantly for our narrative, A legendary striker who famously played for Real Madrid, he is a quintessential icon of Real Madrid's history.
Yes, he is.
The exact same Real Madrid that Zinedine Zidane managed to 3 consecutive titles, which is the exact feat Luis Enrique and PSG are trying to emulate right now. Oh, and the exact same Real Madrid that PSG knocked out in the quarterfinals this season to get to Budapest.
The irony of PSG attempting to build a dynasty on a pitch named after a Real Madrid icon after eliminating Real Madrid is rich. I'm sure the fans back in Spain are deeply enjoying that specific wrinkle.
I'm sure they are just thrilled. And how about the manner of Bayern Munich's exit in the semifinals? We talked about how chaotic that tie was. In the second leg, Ousmane Dembélé scores in the 3rd minute for PSG. Bayern then spends the next 87 minutes desperately, frantically needing a goal to stay alive.
A massive push from them.
And they finally get it in the 94th minute, deep into stoppage time. And who scores it? Harry Kane, his 14th Champions League goal of the season.
It is the ultimate paradox of modern football statistics.
Explain that, because on paper, 14 goals in a single Champions League campaign is heroic.
It is heroic on a spreadsheet, but look at the context. He scores to equalize the game 1-1 on the night. But remember, Bayern lost the first leg 5-4. So when Kane scores his 14th goal of the season in the 94th minute, he is scoring in a tie they are already officially losing 6-5 on aggregate. The referee blows the final whistle almost immediately after. It is the pinnacle of statistical padding mixed with tragic punctuality. I mean, he did his job flawlessly, but structurally, it meant absolutely nothing.
Heartbreaking for Kane, but very on brand for the cruelty of knockout football. And then there's the geography of Arsenal's trauma. We discussed their only other Champions League final appearance in 2006. They lost to Barcelona. Where was that game played? In Paris.
Ouch.
The city of their heartbreak. Now, 20 years later, they finally claw their way back to the grandest stage in European football, and who is standing in their way? A team from Paris.
The ghosts are everywhere for Arsenal. You cannot script a more daunting psychological obstacle course for a fan base.
Which brings me to my absolute favorite bizarre fact in this entire dossier. And it goes right back to the scene we set at the very beginning of this deep dive, the pre-match entertainment. The organizers booked the Killers to headline the show on the pitch in Budapest, and their biggest, most iconic, universally known hit is Mr. Brightside.
Which, as you noted, will echo around the stadium right before the players walk out of the tunnel.
Think about the lyrical context of that song. Arsenal has been on the losing side of every single Champions League or European Cup final they've ever played. Their fans have been suffering in this specific competition for 139 years. They have watched rival clubs lift this trophy year after year.
Year after year.
And the pregame song the organizers chose is a famously frantic, tragic anthem about jealousy, paranoia, and the agonizing pain of watching someone else get exactly what you want. It was only a kiss. It was only a kiss. I mean, is this meant to be inspiring for Arsenal, or is the universe just actively mocking them?
It is certainly a choice by the event planners. But you could argue it perfectly encapsulates the collective anxiety of the Arsenal fan base. I mean, they are sitting in the stands watching a PSG team that has won it recently, a team trying to arrogantly establish a dynasty, while they're just desperately hoping the universe finally cuts them a break. It's the musical embodiment of footballing jealousy.
So what does this all mean for you as you sit down to watch the match? Because we've covered massive ground here. We've explored the incredible tactical collision between Arsenal's unbeatable bank vault defense, anchored by the spatial genius of Declan Rice, and PSG's chaotic 40-goal rampage led by a high press that actively welcomes risks.
The suffocating force versus the shootout artists.
Exactly. We've weighed the crushing historical pressure of Arsenal's 139-year drought against Luis Enrique's bid to match Zidane's back-to-back legacy and secure PSG's 100th win. We've talked about the undeniable revenge narrative from last season's semifinal. We've highlighted Kvaratskhelia's lone, desperate quest for Ballon d'Or immortality, knowing this is his final game before a summer off.
And we've looked at the massive World Cup shadow looming over the rest of these players.
Right. From the England squad to Brazil's core, threatening to break them physically before the summer even begins.
It really is a match where every single blade of grass at the Puskás Aréna has a dense, complicated storyline attached to it.
So as you sit down on your couch or at the pub to watch the match on May 30th, I'd suggest keeping your eyes on the micro battles. Watch how Declan Rice subtly shifts his positioning to systematically dismantle and contain Kvaratskhelia's chaotic dribbling. Watch how that high, risky PSG defensive line deals with the incredibly clinical finishing of Bukayo Saka and Gabriel Martinelli on the counterattack. And crucially, Watch the clock.
Yes, the clock will be very telling.
Look at the body language of the players around the 80th minute. Watch for the heavy legs, the delayed reactions, the sudden realization that they are emptying the tank with a grueling World Cup just 2 weeks away.
And I would leave the listener with one final, broader thought to chew on, building off that exact physical toll. Consider the ripple effect of this single night in Budapest on the rest of the footballing calendar.
Okay, what do you mean?
Well, if Arsenal's core English players, Saka, Rice, White, are emotionally broken by a devastating loss after a 139-year wait, or worse, if they are physically injured in the chaotic, high-speed tempo of this final, the consequences extend far beyond London. Could Paris Saint-Germain not only win the Champions League and start their dynasty, but inadvertently cost England the 2026 World Cup before the tournament even begins?
A terrifying thought for half the fans in that stadium and an entire nation watching at home. And as the sun sets over Budapest and those opening guitar riffs of Mr. Brightside start echoing across the parking lot, you have to wonder, who will be coming out of their cage and who will be doing just fine? Thank you so much for joining us on this deep dive. Enjoy the match.